My name is Shakti and I'm the writer of Counting and Cracking. When I go out on the street near my house or where I work in Liverpool, I'll see people from 30 different ancestral backgrounds before I get my coffee. But that's not how our stages are, particularly our main stages. And so what really excites me about Counting and Cracking is that we're not here to do someone a favor and make some invisible stories visible. We're not here to put on a little thing that makes us feel better about the fact that there's such a big gap in the industry. We're actually here to make a grand piece of theatre about a big Australian story that is central to how this country was built and has developed. And we're doing it in Sydney Town Hall, where people get their citizenship, and so many people have done Stedfords or dance classes when they were young. And it's part of the history of our city, and it's the civic heart of our city. And so I feel like we're telling an Australian story on an Australian main stage. We're celebrating the real position and role we have in Australia. And underneath all that, we happen to all be South Asian or Indigenous, and we happen to be telling a Sri Lankan story. But that's because that's who Australia is, and not the other way around.
My name is Eamon Flack, and I'm the director of Counting and Cracking. You walk into the big hall at Sydney Town Hall, and inside that suddenly will be a Sri Lankan kind of hall with audience on three sides and gates at the far end, out of which 16 actors will emerge to fill for the next 3 hours and 15 minutes this community that we'll have built then and there, with this extraordinary story that covers 50 years in the life of a family across two whole different countries. It's a world all of its own, this show.
My mother is Anandavali. She is a dancer and an artist in her own right, and she's come on board this project as a cultural advisor and assisting with costumes.
The clothing has to be detail specific because the play goes over a period of 40 years, and each character through the years was given the same color palette. So even if you have two different actors doing the same character over a period of 40 years, you'll find that the same color palette is carried through for that character. And going back to 1953 or 1957, there was an era that people were very particular. They took great pride in what they wore and how they wore it, and what they wore also reflected who they were in the fabric of the country. So looking at a person, looking at what they were wearing, and almost looking at the color combination of what they were wearing and how the sari was woven and how the sari was draped, because there were distinctive drapes. For the Jaffna Tamils, the Sinhalese, they had distinctive drapes, and it was a great pride to go into a room and see all these different national costumes that belong to one country. It's a very powerful script. It's a script that deals with human elements, and those human elements are portrayed through what they wear.
When we come to Australia, we bring so much with us. My grandmother brought literally the kitchen sink with her when she came from Sri Lanka, and we left in a hurry because it was 1983 and the beginnings of what we now know was going to be a civil war had broken out. But eventually my grandmother brought everything with her. She brought window frames that became our front gates. She brought the front door. She brought bits of our staircase that are all in our house now. And the clothes we wear are symbols of parts of what we get to keep. And they are objects that we get to hold on to when we've lost so much else. And they all come from a grand history of being the way they are because of the cultures they came from. And every little tiny thing in them, from the way a fabric is woven to the way jewelry is on someone, or the way someone chooses not to do something with a costume, speaks volumes not only to the Sri Lankan community, but probably to lots of South Asian communities and lots of other communities who understand that clothes have that significance to them too. So there's no point doing all this work and not getting things like costume right, because then we're not getting life right. All the kinds of things that people will eat when they come to see canning and cracking is distinctively Sri Lankan. Sri Lankans don't do things by halves, and what I love about Sri Lankan food is that in terms of its richness and its flavour, it is all about trying to deliver the fullness of life to you in every mouth that you have. And the food is being created by Manjula, who's the head chef at Dish. Dish is well known as a Sri Lankan institution in Toongabi. Toongabi and Pendle Hill are kind of like little Sri Lanka at the moment today. And he also has a new restaurant at Glebe as well. We love eating there, and one of the things I love about Dish is that when you go into Manjula's restaurant, there is this parchment on the wall and there's Sinhalese script on it and there's Tamil script on it. And he understands Sinhalese Sri Lankan cooking, he understands Tamil Sri Lankan cooking, and we have this diverse, interlocked life together that feels like the kind of Sri Lanka my mother remembers coming from. And so the ability of food to be something that brings people together is far stronger than the kinds of divides that we're supposed to have in our community. The non-Sri Lankan audience who comes to this show, this is as far away as possible from something that's about an education into Sri Lanka or a lesson about our history. It is an invitation to use theatre for only what theatre can do, which is to literally step into other worlds and immerse yourselves in them at particular times and particular places. And we're at a point in our history with Australian theatre where we haven't been able to do that much with our migrant communities on this grander scale. So it's an offer for people to put aside what they think theatre is and surrender to a new kind of storytelling.
The play moves from beautiful, intimate scenes of people falling in love, which theatre does beautifully and which contemporary theatre doesn't do often. But it also has big, big scenes about political issues, but they're political issues that make or break a society. Like, the stakes are really, really high. And the shift from the intimate, small, beautifully observed details of individual lives to this portrait of an entire society struggling to hold itself together. But then on top of that, there's this extraordinary leap that Shakti takes, and he can do it because he knows it himself from his own experience and his family experience, which is about how that shattered society then has to reform itself in a different country. How people from Sri Lanka came to Australia, how Australia is a place where people might be able to begin again in a different way. And that particular story is so kind of necessary right now when we are so unsure of what to offer people who come from elsewhere.